Good morning everyone, welcome back for another video about heating my home with just electricity, not using an air source heat pump. It's the 27th of November. I started, well, I guess from September by deciding not to turn on my oil boiler, not to have any central heating on in the house at all this winter. So for this year all the way through until basically spring, summer next year. So the reason for doing that is because I want to go electric. I want to get away from oil. I do not want to install gas. Waiting for hydrogen, well, you could just wait decades for that, couldn't you? And I just wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want gas pumped to the house, and I don't want hydrogen pumped to the house. So it's not something I'm interested in. So electricity just makes a huge amount of sense to me because I can produce electricity here through microgeneration, solar panels, wind turbines, that sort of thing. And then I can use my own energy to heat my home. That's much more sensible than buying energy from someone else and letting them benefit from profits. So whether it's gas, oil or hydrogen, I'm not interested in those sort of energies. I want to power my own home and heat my own home with my own energy as much as I can in the winter. Anyway, that's the test I'm doing, gauging how many kilowatt hours it's going to take to heat my home. And then I've got a number, I've got some figures that I can use to equate. What if I went air to air? So what if I went with air conditioning units to heat my home? What if I went for an air source heat pump? Those different COP values that you might get would influence how many kilowatt hours we're going to use. So doing a benchmark now with these COP1 devices gives me a really good starting point, and I learn a lot about the differences between heating your home with electricity versus heating your home with oil. And there are some. I can't believe what I'm discovering. So this video, I'm going to try and answer some of the questions that I've been asked along the way. From the last video, there were lots of comments and questions. I'll try and discuss the design of this house so that you can appreciate the relevance of this test in this home and how I'm performing compared to your own. I'll cover the stats and the costs, the kilowatt hours and the pounds, to see how expensive November has been. And then at the end of the video, I'll also cover a description of the radiators that I'm using so that you can see them and understand how they work, etc. And also the smart plugs that I'm using to control them. Well, let's start with an update of today. Today, basically, 27th of November, it's a Saturday. The heating came on at 4:30 in the morning, these oil-filled radiators automatically, and we were using cheap overnight energy. So I'm on the Octopus Go tariff. I pay 4.5 pence per kilowatt hour for 3 hours during the early hours of the morning. So from 3:30 in the morning till 6:30 in the morning, I get cheap energy. So that's when I boost the temperature of the house. So all the radiators came on. There are 4 or 5 of them, 2 in the hallway, which is central to the house. We have a radiator in the lounge, which covers the entire back of the house. And the house design, think of it like a square. So the back half of the downstairs is the lounge, the front half of the downstairs, which faces south, so we get sunshine, that has the kitchen, the hallway in the middle, and we have a spare room, a study on the other side. So the downstairs is study, kitchen, hallway and lounge on the back, and then upstairs 4 bedrooms basically in the 4 corners with bathroom and hallway in the middle. That's basically the layout. Anyway, so 2 hall radiators, that's one 900 watt and one 700 watt, one 900 watt radiator in the lounge. Then we have a bedroom heater for our daughter. She has a 700 watt oil-filled radiator in her room. The spare room, we don't have a radiator. The wet rooms, the bathrooms, we don't have any heating at all. The kitchen, we don't have any heating at all. And the study, we don't have any heating at all. So it's our bedroom, our daughter's bedroom, that's 2 in the hallway and 1 in the lounge. That's the 5 heaters we have. I have 2 spare radiators, and the idea for that is if the kitchen got so bad that we were in there and we wanted some heat, and we're in a room where we needed extra heat, I can plug an extra one in and move it around wherever we want. That was my idea. But I'm sat here, I'm in the kitchen, we've had no heating in here all day. It's 3 degrees outside, there is a frost on the ground. There's not a lot of sunshine coming through the window, so it's not really warming it up much, but we have cooked breakfast. I'm sat here in a t-shirt. I don't think I'd want to sit here too many hours. I'm not freezing cold, but you know, it's not awful. So this room doesn't really need a heater in it. When the sun comes through, then it'll warm the room naturally. When we're cooking in here, that provides heat and heats the room anyway. And because the moisture we are producing from the cooking process. We have to open the windows anyway, so it's going to get cold in here anyway. So that's the design of the heaters, etc., and the house. And how is it going generally? I'd say it's going better than I expected, because the comfort levels of the house generally are better than what we had with the oil boiler. And let's get on to the first major significant finding, and that is I'm not using the heaters in the same way as I did with the oil boiler. With the oil boiler, I was minimizing its use. I was conserving it. It was an expensive resource, a nasty resource. I didn't want to use it very much. So we'd boost the house in the morning, we'd go out in the morning, and then we'd boost the house in the evening and not have any heating on throughout the day. The only time we had the oil boiler on continuously was when it was below zero and it was continually cold throughout the day, and maybe the weather was bad outside and we were staying in all day. Then the heating would be on all day. What I did use was a log burner. Now, I'm sorry for those that hate log burners, and I know small particles, PM 2.5, all those things. But we use it as an additional heat source. So rather than have the oil boiler on, the log fire will provide heating for downstairs, and that heats both the lounge, the hallway, and then the heat goes through the house. Basically, it's almost provides heat throughout the entire house when we have it on. We used to use it for providing that supplemental heat in the autumn time. So before it got really cold, before you're just about ready to turn the heating on, you'd light the fire and the fire would heat the home and you wouldn't have to turn the central heating on. So it was the additional heating source that we would use. We did not use it as a pretty thing to look at and go, "Ooh, that's wonderful." So for those that don't like it, please don't think of that. It is just an additional heat source. Now, the good news is that now we've been testing with electric heaters, our use has changed of heating. I've noticed that we haven't had the fire on as much. So supplementing our heating in the autumn and now through into the winter, when it's warm enough with just those heaters, I'm not tending to light the fire as much. So we are saving the wood, we are saving the small particles that are being generated from that, but also, obviously there's no boiler on, there's no oil being used at all. Now, when we used the oil boiler, we were conserving energy a lot. I'm noticing that I'm not conserving the energy as much now that it's electricity, because it's solar. So when we've got a sunny day, let's say we generate 10, 15 kilowatt hours of solar energy, and we've got not much else to use it for the day because we've already heated the hot water. We don't have an electric car to charge at the moment. I sold my electric car, and the hot water's heated, the home storage battery is recharged. So basically that 15 kilowatt hours during the day on a sunny day in November can go just to the heaters. So we can turn them on even if we don't need them. Even if we're going out, I can have them on using that free solar energy rather than exporting it to the grid. And that's keeping the home warmer than it would otherwise be. Now, obviously, we wouldn't do that with the oil boiler. We wouldn't go out and leave the boiler on. So having the solar, having the cheap electricity and cheap overnight electricity is meaning that I'm more carefree about using the heaters. The house is warmer than it would be if we had a central heating system. And that seems bizarre. I've turned off an expensive, all-encompassing central heating system and put a couple of oil-filled radiators in that cost between £30 and £49. So we've only spent a couple of £100 on these heaters. And we're using them more and heating the house to better, more comfortable levels. I actually thought I preferred the cooler temperatures. But now the house is getting warmer. I'm starting to get used to it and I'm starting to like it more, of having a greater level of warmth. So the fact that we're using a cleaner, greener energy, the fact that it's cheaper, the fact we're generating our own, is just like an electric car. With an electric car, you feel enabled. You feel that you can go out for more trips. You don't feel restricted. You go out just for the sake of it because you fancy a drive, because there's no cost implication to it. Or if there is, it's tiny. Now that seems to be the same that's happening with the central heating system. Because there's more energy available, it's cheaper and we're more carefree about it, we're using it more and we're becoming freer with it. So it feels less restricted and the house is being heated better. Now, yep, there are some exceptions because the central heating system would heat the towel rails in all of our wet rooms, so in our cloakroom, our bathroom, ensuite and kitchen. So that is an issue, that those wet rooms are not being heated. So they're getting heat through the walls, they're getting heat that's transferring from other rooms, but they're not being heated. And I mentioned in the last video, the one problem that we've encountered so far was damp towels. So after you've washed, after you've showered, how do you dry your towel if you're not able to take it outside and dry it on the line, which we would otherwise do if it was a sunny day? Now, in the comments from our last video, so many people were recommending buy a dehumidifier. That's the way to do it. I've always thought of dehumidifiers as things that people in caravans use, or people with damp problems or leaks in the house, or mold up the walls. You need a dehumidifier for those things. How wrong was I? Because after buying one, it's like a light bulb's come on. Of course we need a dehumidifier. Of course it's a good addition to many, many homes. And it doesn't mean you've got problems with your home. It just means you're creating a more comfortable environment for yourself. And that light bulb moment has really, really been affected by my thoughts about heating the home. Because I've been going around the house on the outside, sealing up gaps, sealing up holes in the house on outside sockets and where waste pipes come through the wall. So I've been putting silicone around those, sealing those gaps up, creating a more airtight home so that if we go air source heat pump, it will work more effectively, because the more cold air that you have coming in, the harder it will be to heat your home. So the more heat you can retain in your house, the more effective your heating system will be. Now, with an air source heat pump, obviously, if you've got lots of drafts coming in and it's only heating at lower temperatures, then it might not heat as well. There's some of the scare stories you hear, isn't it, about air source heat pumps. But if you can seal your house up, if you can get rid of those drafts, if you can add insulation, insulation is absolutely key, of course, then you can heat your home on lower temperatures. So even people with gas and oil boilers can turn down those thermostats and have flow temperatures of more like 40 degrees C rather than 50, 60 or even more, some ridiculously hot temperatures. You don't need those levels of heat to heat your home. So what I've been suddenly thinking about this light bulb coming on and humidity is, well, we're sealing our house. We're heating our home and being more efficient by keeping the air in the house. But because there's less fresh air coming into the house, we're actually creating an environment where condensation and damp and moisture and mold and all those things and bacteria will thrive. So we're sort of defeating the object, and we're just sort of defeating ourselves, that we're maximising our heat retention and our heating ability, but causing a humidity problem because we can't stop generating moisture. My breathing now is generating moisture. I've noticed that the rooms that we do get condensation on two of the windows are only from the moisture we create that we expel overnight. It's not because we're showering or bathing or leaving damp closed air in the house. Those aren't the reasons why we're getting condensation. It's not because we have a leak. It really is just because we have no ventilation, we have no airflow. Our double glazing windows are extremely modern, but they have no trickle vents. I'm really surprised about that. So our house is really quite airtight, and I've actually noticed this year with me sealing up more of the gaps, I've noticed some of the smoke from the fire when you open the door comes in more than it did last year. So I think we have really sealed the house up even more. But we need ventilation, so I can't do too much. I haven't sealed up the air bricks that let ventilation through specifically for the fire. But it is something we want to do, isn't it? So how do we cope with the moisture levels in the house? Every time you have a shower, you're generating something like 5 litres of moisture into the air, so I'm being told, through evaporation of the water and the steam. Every time you run a hot tap, every time you boil a kettle, every time you cook, all the people that you have in the house, anytime you're drying your hair and then you're hanging a towel up over a radiator, all of that moisture is coming back into the air and then soaking into the fabric of your house. And if you're not having fresh air circulate, of course, when it's freezing cold outside, so your windows are really cold, and it meets that warmer, moist air, it causes condensation. Now, I'll give you an update on that for our level. In one room of the house, we have noticed a couple of small black spores of mold forming on the what do you call it, the top area of the window. And I think that's because we've got less insulation there on the top of the window. So in the recess of the wall, so under there behind the curtain, the most upper part there in our bedroom has got a couple of tiny black spores of mold, and that's basically from when we've had so much condensation in previous years that you've got moisture there that's got into that environment. But I think it's because there's an insulation problem. We don't have as much insulation just above the window at that sort of level. But we don't have any ventilation specifically. So if we leave the windows open, it's fine, but when it's freezing cold, that's not comfortable. Close them up. The liquid we're generating from ourselves and with a towel drying in the ensuite, it's enough moisture to create condensation. And we were seeing, I'll draw a line here with my finger, so roughly up to here down on the window was the worst condensation we'd see in the winter. So when it was frosty outside, we'd have to take a one of these aquavac things and vacuum the window here and clean the window with the moisture. And yeah, some millilitres of water would come off that. But it's just that one room, and now I understand it's a lack of ventilation. So we've bought a dehumidifier. Anyway, cut a long story short, I listened to all the comments from the last video, I bought a dehumidifier, bought some thermostats that measure humidity, and it really has been a light bulb moment. Because the moment we turned it on and we saw how much liquid is coming out of not just that room, but the house generally, we were just astonished by it. And to see the levels of humidity come down from high 70s to 50s, the house feels different. So I'll say that again, it feels different. You can really notice the difference just on the moisture content. It feels different, it smells different, it's fresher, it's a much more comfortable environment. So we should have had a dehumidifier for winter a long time ago, and we only run it for a couple of hours in the evening before we go to bed to reduce the moisture levels in the bedroom, and a couple of hours in the morning as well on the cheap energy that occurs. And we use the dehumidifier as a heater as well now in our bedroom, and that has worked extremely well. We now get no condensation at all. What I have noticed today, it was a frost outside, it's 3 degrees right now, and right along the edge of the frame here there was a bead of water or two on the windows. That's the first sign of moisture I've seen. So it's got extremely cold outside, and I didn't have the humidifier on as much yesterday as I would normally have it, and there you go. So not only controlling condensation, not only controlling moisture levels, but just making your home more comfortable. And this light bulb moment again, I'll repeat it again. If you're sealing your house up to keep heat in, and you're generating moisture in your house and not getting rid of it by ventilating, then where's it going to go? You basically have to extract it from the air or open the windows and doors and let the heat out and refresh the air. Now, one of the other systems you can get a positive air introduction, can't you? So I think you get some fans basically that blow air from your loft into your home, and that creates a positive pressure in your house and forces out the bad air, shall we say, through any cracks that you've still got left in your house. It forces that air out and keeps the fresh air in. But you're bringing in cold air. So that's defeating the object of heating your home again. And to do that really well, you're going to need filters on those. And if it's too cold in your loft, then you're going to want a heating system to heat that air before it comes in. It starts to get very complicated, potentially. So I think dehumidifiers just make a huge amount of sense because it's a cheap, easy device to install. You can use it when you want to. It's portable, you can move it around, and if you have a desiccant one rather than a compressor one, you'll get a fair amount of heat off it as well. So you can use it as part of your heating your home. Anyway, there you go. So the significant things that I've noticed are you change your way you heat your home, just like you change how you use your car when you go electric, because you feel freer. It's a better feeling. I'm less restricted with the amount of fuel I'm using, and it is cheaper. So yeah, we'll get to the costs and the stats in a moment. It is cheaper, it really is. I can't believe that. So we're warmer, we're using more energy, and it is cheaper than using oil, and it's only a COP1 device. Anyway, the second most significant observation was the condensation. I cannot believe that. So if you're thinking about heating your home and changing your heating system, Don't just think about heat. Think about the air quality inside and whether you need better ventilation, a ventilation system, or whether you need some form of dehumidification. One of the comments I got recently, just a couple of days ago, was somebody saying they had air-to-air Toshiba air conditioning units, and in the winter they're using them as heaters. Now they have filters in and dehumidifying. So what a perfect solution. It's heat, it's ventilation, it's filtering, it's dehumidifying. That's a really, really good solution. Air source heat pump, well, that doesn't dehumidify, does it? And doesn't filter the air either. So all of these things are things we need to think about if we're going to spend thousands and thousands of pounds improving the heating system in our home. We need to be sure that what we're getting is a long-term solution, a long-term investment, and it really is going to work for us. And that's the purpose of this test, to discover these things along the way. Right, I've waffled enough. Let's get on to some of the details. Right, I've got the stats here. So far for the month, up to the 27th of November, we have used 290 kilowatt hours of grid energy. And so I'll show you those details in a moment, but that's a lot more than we would use previously. So in a previous month of, say, September, we might have only used 10 or 20 kilowatt hours because we've got solar panels and a home storage battery. In October, I think we only used 88 kilowatt hours, so just under 90. That was for October. It was a mild October. There were some frost, there were some cold days, but generally it was a sunny month and generally it was a mild month. November has been equally mild and pretty sunny in the start, and it's been awful in the end of the month. So we've had 7 straight days where we've had hardly any solar at all, and we've now had quite a few days in a row where it's been 3, 4, 5 degrees overnight, so it's been pretty cold. So we're not into minus levels yet, but it is seriously cold. You know, you go outside and you can feel a cold snap on your face, and no, that's not the reason why I'm growing some whiskers. But anyway, 290 kilowatt hours from the grid. That's on average 11 kilowatt hours a day. Heating the house, we used 465 kilowatt hours over the entire month to heat the house. That's an average of 17.9 kilowatt hours a day. The maximum was 30.5, the minimum 11 kilowatt hours. So on a day where we didn't need very many heaters and it was mild enough and warm enough that we didn't heat them during the cheap period either, we managed with just 11 kilowatt hours for everything in the house, including heating it. And the maximum was 30.5. Now, surprisingly, that maximum isn't when it was at the coldest day, which is basically today. Today's one of the coldest days we've got. The 30.5 was one of the sunniest days. So it's when there was more energy to use, so I used more of it. And that was what I was saying earlier. When there's more energy available and it's cheap, you use more of it and you use it more freely. So what I'm finding on colder days where we are using the heaters a lot during that 3:30 to 6:30 in the morning to boost the temperature of the house, we're often not having to use those heaters throughout the day. The heat has retained in the house long enough that we don't need to use the heaters again until later in the afternoon and evening. And then we can use the stored solar energy from the home storage battery to heat the home for a few hours before we go to bed. So that has worked extremely well, and probably on those days, so when it's not the sunniest of days, it's probably more like 15 to 20 kilowatt hours is what the house is using overall. So I'm really impressed with those numbers. I'm quite surprised because the cost of that works out to be, for the 290 kilowatt hours so far, we've spent £21. £21. It is so cheap. This test has just gone so well. I can't really believe how well it's gone. It's convinced me that, yes, I need to heat my home with electricity. It's convinced me that it's cheaper, because if it's cheaper on a COP1 style device, imagine what it's like using an air source heat pump or an air-to-air air conditioning system. It's going to use even fewer kilowatt hours. And I could improve things like adding a mixergy tank as well for my hot water. There's so many different things you can do to reduce the number of kilowatt hours. but the number that I'm starting with doesn't seem to be huge already. So I'm looking forward to the continuation of this test to see how bad the winter gets, to see how many kilowatt hours we actually use over December and January as well, and look at the total cost. Have I just been lulled into a false sense of security because November has been milder? Perhaps it's going to be awful again during December and January. I don't know. But also I've then got the addition of these infrared solar panels. Sorry, I've then got the addition of these infrared panels into the wet rooms, if I can get that done. So yeah, there's some improvements to come, and there's some more things to learn, no doubt, but so far it is looking extremely good. So I would definitely recommend buying some portable heaters. I would definitely recommend buying a portable dehumidifier, and if you'd like to see my test, have a look through my recent videos. I've done one recently on the difference between a desiccant dehumidifier and a compressor dehumidifier, looking at two comparable units, so you might find that useful. But these things aren't necessarily what you want as a heating system, but to improve and boost what your heating system provides and to reduce the moments when you turn on your gas or oil central heating. These sort of things are essential, I think, and they can really save a couple of months worth of turning your heating on by having these additional heat sources. So I'm really, really impressed with what's been going on, and it's a big benefit to our home, and it's not just me saying it. That's the important thing to say here. Susan, my wife, she thinks the home is being heated better now with these oil-filled radiators than it is with the oil boiler. And also our daughter is loving having her own heat source in her own bedroom. There was times with the central heating system where it just didn't balance right and her room was cold and she had to ask for the extra heating to come on, and then it was harder to manually change the thermostatic valves to just get the heat in her room. It wasn't a very well set up system, but now it's so much easier. It's just one plug, one switch, one radiator, turn it on and she gets the heat. And it's very, very quick. It heats her room within 5 to 10 minutes. It's warm within 20 minutes. It's toasty warm. So yeah, everyone here really, really likes going electric. Everyone's behind it. We are definitely getting rid of this oil boiler. It is going. The only question is, what will we replace it with? Will it be an air source heat pump, which I'm still getting a quote for, and I hope the price comes in at a sensible level and the renewable heat incentive grant helps me do that. I really hope that that comes across, but I'm also tempted and interested into the air conditioning units that can also dehumidify as well and air condition during the summer. Those are attractive as well. I like the sound of those. But you don't have those air conditioning units in your wet rooms, in your bathrooms, etc. So I still have that issue to resolve. Lots more to find out. More videos to come, end of month update videos for my energy consumption for my house with 6.3 kilowatts of solar panels and battery storage. I am in the hopefully final throes of negotiating a change to the house now with more solar panels and another different home storage battery. So details of that to come soon. So thank you for watching. I know it's a really long video, so if you've got to the end, thanks for listening to my waffle. I find this stuff absolutely fascinating, and that's why I go on and on. I'm really enjoying doing this test. I'm really enjoying sharing the information, and thank you so much for all of your positive comments saying that you're benefiting from it or you're already doing this and giving me good ideas. I absolutely love that engagement, so keep the comments coming. Thumbs up on the videos, please, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye for now.